Story 1. Last year, one manager, Robert, became obsessed with, sexually harassed, and stalked a young female coworker, but somehow managed to keep his job. Fast forward to the start of this year, and my company has mandatory anti-sexual harassment training, and the name of the harasser in the training example is Robert. Big elephant in the room. Story 2. Friend had filed for divorce. Her husband hadn't been served the papers, so he didn't know yet, but everyone else knew it was coming, and they came to a party together. Story 3. I was at a party once, where a girl cheated on her boyfriend with the host of the party. Her boyfriend was at work, and they were really loud, so everyone knew. Well, fast forward an hour or two, to her boyfriend knocking on the door to pick her up. That was the most uncomfortable I have ever been. I cut those people off and told the boyfriend the day after. Not sure if it was the right thing to do, but I reasoned, if it was me in that situation, I would want to know. Story 4. A friend of mine gave his ex-girlfriend and the girl he cheated on her with a ride home at the same time after a party. It was a silent car ride the entire way until the ex got out and sarcastically said, "This was fun. We should do this again." To give more context, the girls were in the same close-knit friend group. The group still mostly exists today. Story 5. At my first post-university job, one day I'm called in to learn a whole bunch of stuff about a system that only Dave knows about. I have no idea why. I'm totally out of my depth, and this is out of the blue. I take notes for a few hours. At noon, the meeting abruptly ends, and I go back to my desk. 15 minutes later, Dave walks past all of us, picks up some stuff from his desk, says, "Bye, guys," and leaves. Only I respond with, "See you later, Dave." Apparently, everyone knew Dave was being fired except me. Story 6. My senior year in high school, the band director was involved with one of my classmates. We students knew it. The band director and my classmate barely tried hiding their relationship. It was almost done in the open. The faculty knew too. Everybody knew, except the band director's wife, who worked at the same high school. Story 7. The general manager at my work was having an affair with the accountant. His wife was the food and beverage director at the same place. He's an Asian man with dark skin and black hair. The accountant is a blonde white lady. Her 3 kids came to our company Christmas party. 2 of them were tall, blonde, white-looking kids, but the other one had dark skin, jet black hair, and looked like a skinny Asian kid. He was the spitting image of our general manager. Everybody noticed. It was the subject of everybody's conversation that night. I think even the general manager's wife caught on. She ended up leaving the party early without saying anything to anybody, which was unusual for her. Story 8. So we had a nightmare producer years back at my company who just played solitaire on his computer all day, and his team had devolved into a total mess. He'd moved up from a state away, and his family was still at the old place for a few months. It turns out he'd taken the opportunity of living away from his family to reconnect with his old flame. Our company was having an employee board game night, and significant others were welcome. He brought his girlfriend and introduced her to everyone. We all knew he was married with kids, mind you. It was super awkward. Anyway, a few weeks later, he sent out a team-wide email from his company account saying he was bringing his wife and kids in for a tour and asked us not to mention his girlfriend. He's lucky I wasn't on his team. I wouldn't have stood for that. He walked his family through pretending to be the perfect family man, and you could cut the tension with a knife. He ended up abandoning his family as soon as they'd uprooted their lives and moved to join him. Real piece of work. Story 9. A girl in my social circle broke up with her husband and the father of her children and moved in with this unstable guy. For about 4 months, her Facebook comments and conversations were full of statements like, "You don't get to judge my love," and "I'm finally doing what I want for me for a change, so you need to be quiet," and so forth. Then one day, she just wanders in with her husband, and they're back together. Story 10. My mom left my dad. I was 12. She left him a letter on the fireplace explaining what she had done. I was sitting in that room on my own, waiting for my dad to come home, and read the letter. Story 11. A guy in my extended circle of friends has the hobby of metaphorically rubbing salt and acid into others' wounds. He really pushes them to the point where violence is just about to happen, and he really pulls no punches with no respect for personal circumstances. Your parents just died? That is no reason for him to really rub it in. People tell him, one of these days, someone will actually hit you hard. You realize that? To which he said, well, those who are so primitive as to be triggered by a few words will get sued. Just this weekend, after he played another of these games with someone, the tables were turned on him. He wanted to go to the bathroom, and the guy next to him had to stand up to let him through. Instead, he just said, nah, gotta finish my drink first. With just about one sip left in it. In only 10 seconds, this little turd snapped completely, pushed the guy from his chair, causing 3 people to get soaked in beer and broken glass all over the floor, and the walls, which were painted just a week ago, full of beer and colorful cocktails. He ran off immediately. The next day, I met his friends, not him, again to help clean up the mess at the bar and paint the walls again. None of his friends said anything about what he did. They acted like it was normal to clean up after a grown man throwing a tantrum for having his own game thrown back at him. Story 12. I had a father talk to me at parent-teacher night one year. He had cheated on his pregnant wife years ago, but everything was okay now, as he was still with his wife. However, his mistress had also gotten pregnant. I had both his son and daughter in my class, but they didn't know they were related. The daughter just didn't know her father and had eventually been adopted by her mother's husband. Anyway, I was told, I'm letting you know so if they start getting interested in each other, romantically, you should stop it immediately. Story 13. So my boss, vice president, had a 1-year anniversary lunch. Later that week, he recommended someone for the open position of his boss, chief technology officer, who got hired. The chief technology officer announced tomorrow's lunch would be catered in the office. The next day, right before lunch, the chief technology officer announced he decided to have a flatter reporting structure, so the vice president would be let go. The vice president was there for the lunch and ate with us, exactly 1 week after his anniversary lunch. Edit: vice presidents were interviewing candidates over the summer. I don't know when my vice president made the recommendation or when the actual hiring took place. From their interactions, the vice president and the chief technology officer did not know each other previously. Story 14. It was at my great-uncle's funeral. Everyone in my family is extremely close. Everyone knows everyone. So when we saw a young woman, around her 20s, hanging around, people were confused. Everyone knew she wasn't part of the family, but no one dared to say anything. Finally, an aunt had some small talk with her and learned who she was. It turns out she was his daughter from when he cheated on his wife. No one even knew he had an affair, much less a daughter from it. Story 15. My mom told me 2 days before Christmas that she was going to leave my dad after the holidays. I had to sit through Christmas dinner with them both knowing what was going to happen. He had no idea. My dad's not perfect, but he's a good guy, and it killed me not to say anything. My mom was telling me that he had previously been violent, and that I couldn't tell him because he could lash out. I've never seen him raise a finger to her, but what else could I do in that situation? Less than 24 hours after she left, she moved back in and treated him like garbage. My dad resented me for not saying anything. My mom blamed everything on me despite the fact that she left to be with her online lover, who turned out to be a scammer from Ghana. Eventually things subsided, mainly because my family sweeps everything under a rug. Story 16. A coworker of mine was arrested and escorted out of Lowe's because he stole over $3,000 in the cash office. He was a head cashier. Fast forward to later that year when he was hired as a financial aid advisor at Mount St. Mary's College. Then they promoted him. Imagine having a financial aid officer at a university, only to find out they are handling your financial aid package but were arrested for theft. This college claims to run background checks. Edit 1. Oh my God. I didn't expect this to blow up, but I'm glad I could raise awareness on this. I will respond to everyone as soon as possible. This was Mount St. Mary's College in Newburgh, New York. Story 17. A regular came into a bar where I worked after the other regulars, about 7 of them, Showed me and two other bartenders on shift the mommy kink videos his wife had made with his brother. Story 18. My family was eating dinner a little over a month ago when I was still home, and my mom asked my dad, brother, and me to describe her in 3 words. None of us said anything because my mom is demanding, and even my brother, the golden child, thought she was a horrid parent. She described herself as a great mother, kind person, and pretty. My brother and I said, I thought you could only use 3 words. That's 5. The sad part is that what we said went right over her head. Story 19. I had one in my cab. I was driving a truck taking freight to a regional town about 4 hours drive away. I left the main depot at 3:30 a.m. and got to the town at 7:30 a.m., then went to sleep in a caravan until the return trip at 3 p.m., arriving at the main depot at 7 p.m. Then I could go home for a while before going back to do it again. It was a miserable existence. One day, the operations manager calls me. He tells me that he's got a guy who is giving him trouble, but he doesn't actually have grounds to fire him. He wants this guy to take over my run, and I have to train him for one night, hoping that by giving him a bad run, he'll quit. In return, I get a great changeover run where I'll be getting more money, no split shift, and I'll be home in my own bed every day. So, I'm driving, making small talk, acting like I'm just a guy showing another guy the ropes, all the while knowing that this guy is on his way out. And I got the feeling that he kind of knew what was going on as well. As it happened, he didn't quit. About a month later, he verbally abused the operations manager, who was a woman, of the company we were contracted to. He was instantly fired. Story 20. Just an hour ago, my lady and mother-in-law came back home with the kids from an outing. My father-in-law came over shortly after. They have been divorced for quite some time, and I have never seen them in one room before. I excused myself to do yard work after he gave me the firmest and longest handshake he has ever given me. Story 21. I worked as the middleman between the state government and the company I worked for. We did contract work for the government. I got an email saying they wanted to meet with us to discuss some work activities and to nominate a delegate. The manager suggested it would be good exposure to send the team and their leader down. I went with them for support. The government delegate had us in a room and said, I wasn't expecting everyone to turn up. We were intending to let you know we're not funding this team anymore. We went back and shared that we were pushed in front of a bus. I was the only person who went back to work. The rest of the team took the day off. Story 22. Met a dude who insisted he didn't do drugs, was definitely on MDMA, and he was lovely as anything. Introduced himself one-on-one with a hug to our whole crew, then asked to rap his original content for us. We hesitantly agreed to listen. I only remember one line, my cock breaks lumbers. Who cares if you're 15 and I'm 21? They just numbers. Story 23. Had a gay vice president who vilified a Jewish coworker for speaking up because the vice president was being unpleasant during our meetings. The vice president did all he could to make our coworker's life miserable. I would find him crying at his desk. The coworker was out for a month because he was suffering from neurological issues. During that time, our vice president did everything in his power to fire him. When the coworker returned, he was already looking for another job within the company, which is a large corporation with many branches, and found out the vice president was calling everywhere telling people not to hire him. Finally, he left. Last month, the vice president mandated that we all sit in 4-day, 6-hour meetings about critical race theory. He talked about how important it was to feel heard, be a co-conspirator for others, speak up for those who can't when the situation happens and not after the fact, confront the attacker regardless of power structure, and not hold back because of gender, race, sexuality, etc. We all sat there fuming because the elephant's presence was in our face and making it hard to breathe. Story 24. I had to tell a coworker, whose wedding I was supposed to stand in, that her fiancé was cheating on her with someone we all worked with. It was terrible business, but she had to know. Story 25. My girlfriend broke up with me, and she told all my friends and my sister before she told me. I didn't find out until 2 weeks after we broke up that we had broken up. Story 26. In middle school, we went to our outdoor education week-long camping trip, and a few days in, all the students were brought in for an assembly. The principal came in and told us that the majority of our 8th grade teachers were being let go because they apparently obtained copies of statewide tests and distributed them as practice sheets. Kids and teachers started crying, and it was a pretty unfortunate environment for the last few days. Story 27. I worked in the information technology team for years for a company, fixing laptops and so on. We found inappropriate content on a manager's laptop and reported it. It took days for human resources to get organized and dismiss him, and we were told to keep quiet. Company drinks that Friday night were tense, as only the whole IT team knew what was going to happen to him. This manager was giving his usual self-righteous speech to everyone, and we were all staring daggers at him, trying to keep our mouths shut. He was gone by Monday. Story 28. I know a preacher who married a former prostitute who already had a son. Her son looks just like him, even though they are unrelated. Everyone knows that is his biological son, except his son, who thinks he was adopted, and his son's wife, who is clearly in denial.